experience of the shadow, of your shadow, of the cultural shadow, of the societal and global shadow, of historical shadows, of karmic, ancestral shadows, all sorts of things. And really, it's designed, these experiences are designed so that by facing these things, by seeing them clearly, you can make peace with them or become enlightened by them. And I think it does a lot of things. It helps people empathize with the world around them to a much greater degree than perhaps they were doing before they took this medicine. And it helps people clean out fears of all different types. So it's a really beautiful medicine. A sort of key component of this experience is in the jungle what they call la purga, which just means the purge. And it's the divine ingredient of the ayahuasca is an incredibly powerful purgative. So as you're facing these shadows, deep in your psyche throughout the night, oftentimes people will be able to breathe and center and accept and learn a great deal. But I've found that more often than not, the power and force of these visions is such that at least your first couple of times, people simply can't contain their emotions and their body in the face of what they're seeing. And so you purge, you vomit, you scream, you go out the bottom. Maybe you have to have like a little tantrum on the floor, or pound your fists, or laugh until you vomit again, or cry or moan. And sometimes it's just a pure channeling of energy that's in some ways been locked into your body for a really long time. So if anyone does yoga, you'll be familiar with the fact that as you do yoga and it becomes more of a discipline in your life, you sometimes feel after a yoga class like you've literally been able to, through movements of the body, you've been able to release stress from the past couple of weeks, and it's just gone. It's no longer with you. Ayahuasca does that sometimes on the scale of something like years within hours, which is why it's so powerful. And which is why I think right now ayahuasca is experiencing a sort of global renaissance. And maybe psychedelics in general, I'm not so sure about that. But people from all over the world are going to South America to do this, which raises a lot of questions about sustainability and about a lot of other things. So it's an interesting subject right now for a lot of reasons, not just because it's a powerful medicine. Also, there's communities all over the United States that are now bringing shamans up to the United States. There are all sorts of various expressions like the Santo Daime and the UDV, which are sort of Christian, Banda, interesting fusions of ayahuasca shamanism from Brazil that have made their way up here and have actually taken some great legal strides, being recognized by the Supreme Court and being allowed to practice as churches in different parts of the United States. So it's an interesting subject, and I expect that there will be, just much like yoga made its migration to the United States in the 1950s, 60s, I expect that some of the same dramas and cultural dialogues will start to happen as ayahuasca makes its way more and more into various parts of the world, which, believe it or not, is, for most of the shamans that I've worked with in South America, have seen this coming for quite some time. And they sort of are excited about it because they know that the medicine, which they believe is a literal sentient being in this plant that heals people, is in fact trying to make its way around the world to be a sort of ally for us as we're in some sort of transformational gauntlets at the moment. But also there's that factor where it's like, they've been the caretakers of this medicine for a long time, so there's some hesitance, and there are squabbles, and as you can imagine, it's a difficult thing to let a tradition be shared by the world when you've been the gatekeepers of it. You immediately see people trying to reinvent the wheel, and like, oh, I have the substance. Just because I have the substance, now I'm going to take it back to the U.S. and have a get-together in my backyard, and we'll create our own ceremony. And this is such a powerful substance. It's not like recreational use of mushrooms or LSD, or it's very powerful, and in many ways the life force of this being that's in the plant is so strong that you have to have some kind of container for it, which is why the shamanic tradition will have to be a part of the dialogue as it continues to migrate around the world. So that's a little bit about ayahuasca. So my book is an exploration of ayahuasca from a personal, transformational point of view. I had read many books about ayahuasca that were anthropological in nature. So it was like mostly academics who were studying, or who had, or sort of fringe academics like Terence McKenna or, Daniel Pinchback, or sort of fringy journalist work where they're going down and they're writing about this from a sort of intellectual, journalistic, or even anthropological point of view. But I had never read anything, maybe a few like highly idiosyncratic personal accounts like on Arrowhead. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Arrowhead, but it's like where you go to jot down your notes about whatever trip you took. This to me was not sufficient. Like, I had not read a personal account of the ayahuasca experience that I resonated with, that I felt like was exploring with the same integrity the personal experience as these journalists and anthropologists were, the cultural relevance or the tradition or whatever. So my book is a coming-of-age story, really. I wanted to explore, like, as I was having these experiences, which were dialoguing with my Christian background and stints with fundamentalism and Pentecostal churches and Baptist colleges and drugs and addiction and promiscuity and sort of compulsive behavioral problems and a really broken relationship with my preacher father and all of these, and with my grandfather and my dad's relationship to his grandfather. I wanted to write a book about fathers and sons, about men and young men's sort of spiritual coming-of-age journeys. I wanted to go even out a little bit from that and just look at the coming-of-age mythos in general. And I wanted to do it all through the lens of stories. Because in my experience, that's where the best learning came from in my life, was hearing stories. Like, whenever people tell stories about their life that are personal and sort of imbued with a lot of heart, I learn the most. So the book is a coming-of-age memoir that explores all of these backstories. So there's one thread of the book that's backstory, where I'm exploring my past. Woven into that is ayahuasca ceremonies and the personal experience of drinking ayahuasca, and how that healing process dialogues with the backstory is the fun part of the book. So I'll give you guys a little sample of a little bit of backstory and then a little bit of ayahuasca, so you can get a feel for the two main currents of the book. So here's what I'll do. I'll start off with the first chapter where I'm drinking ayahuasca for the very first time. It's very toward the beginning of the book. It's called Take This Cup. One lantern was lit in the mesa. The jungle lurched and bent with cackling bird calls and bullfrog croaks in the lagoon. Thunderclouds rumbled above the canopy of the forest, and a small lodge dog named Cucaracha snored underneath the awning of the screen door. 6 of us sat in a circle. A master shaman of El Puma Negro Healing Lodge, an American named Ethan Richter, sang medicine songs into the ceremonial tin cup, invoking the chief medicinal plant spirits of the jungle. I had met Ethan 2 days before the first ceremony. "Welcome to El Puma Negro, this is my home," Ethan had said to us as our canoes came to rest against the bank of a murky green lagoon. El Puma Negro Lodge sat on the top of a hill overlooking the river. When I first arrived in Iquitos, Peru, I had expected Ethan's teachers, mestizo shamans named Domingo and Arturo, to lead the ayahuasca ceremonies. Even though Ethan assured us that he had completed a rigorous apprenticeship and had been granted the title of maestro by his teachers and their lineage, I felt skeptical when I learned that Arturo and Domingo would be absent for the ceremonies. Having come to the Amazon for the healing effects and transcendental visions of the mystical entheogen traditionally called huasca, or the yahe, but more popularly ayahuasca, and having only read books and magazine articles about the shamanic traditions of the Amazon, using ayahuasca is illegal in the United States. My intention was to have a sacred and not recreational psychedelic experience, something like a vision quest or primitive rite of passage. I was therefore apprehensive about Ethan's shamanic qualifications. Certainly a white man leading the ceremonies meant I was not guaranteed the, quote, real ayahuasca experience. But after traveling nearly 24 hours from the United States to the jungle outpost city of Iquitos, and after listening to Ethan speak eloquently about his ayahuasca apprenticeship on the ferry carrying us upriver from Iquitos into the jungle, I was appeased enough to let the white man into a tradition I, the white man, knew next to nothing about anyway. When we collected the